Welcome to In Her Words with Women in Entertainment. In the next 30 minutes, we are going to be talking to extraordinary people about their journeys in entertainment and everything in between. As we talk about what it takes to make your mark in the industry, lessons they have learned along the way, and how they have harnessed their creativity in ways that inspire us all. So, guys, today is our first podcast, and we are so excited to have one of our fan favorites, Karen Pittman, joins us today. She's an incredible actress. She is grounded and she is inspiring, and I hope you feel that throughout the conversation.
She takes us to such an amazing place that we never thought we would go, and we think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. The podcast, one of the things we want to touch on for our audience, who you got to meet a lot of them in person
Yes,
at the
it was
summit.
so amazing.
Yeah.
That was an amazing summit. I was so glad to be a part of
Oh,
it.
thank you. It
Yeah.
was great having you. Then they, oh gosh, the feedback was just fantastic.
Yeah, I wish I had been in all of the other sort of meetups and conversations that you guys
Right,
had
you
because
wanna
they
be
all
there
seem
listening
yeah,
too,
oh my
right? It's
gosh.
amazing
It was
what you
great.
yeah, the generosity we say is just I mean, people are just so generous with everything that we do. But you saw that there's so many students and young people there. We love to hear your story, your come up story,
Oh,
which I mean,
Yeah.
your schooling and your opera background and all of that we know about, but how what were you gonna be? Did you always know from a little girl that you wanted to be on stage and you wanted to be
so funny.
acting?
It's a good question. When I was very young, uh I was highly emotional, very sensitive, very empathic.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of my friends who have children who are, you know, they have emotional breakdowns or they're just like incredibly sensitive or they're very dramatic or they're always working on like putting extra makeup on or they're just like Karen, I don't know what to do. I think I have an artist in my I was that kid, do you know? Um what really shaped my um trajectory getting into acting and singing and art was really my parents' relationship. It sounds weird, but they had a troubling, toxic attachment to each other, and I lived through that um, as a child, and I wanted them to be happy.
Mhm.
And my way of trying to process their unhappiness with each other was to become an empath. So I could feel everything they were feeling and I processed everything they were processing. And I loved both of them unconditionally so that when they were unhappy or things between them weren't going well. I mean, these are the two people that were the center of my life. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Um, so I really found my life's purpose in um uh trying to create a positive reflection for them um, of their humanity. Weird as it sounds, that was what I was doing when I was very young. And I just really made that into a kind of a way of self expression when I was very, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. And it wasn't about like being in front of people because I was very, very shy.
Mm.
It was really about if I don't get this thing out of my head and my body, in my heart, then I am going to self-destruct. I started, doing stupid things like little stealing things and bad behavior and talking
Yeah.
back, and it was my way of surviving emotionally. So the arc of me becoming an actor started really from a wound,
Mm.
which I think a lot of
Yeah.
actors you'll see that's part of how they've gotten into it. So the days where you're on social media and you see this person and on IG or they're popular, that was obviously not where I was when I was young. um I really got into it because it was important for me to emotionally survive, and my way of survival was acting. Of course, I ended up going to college, which you guys know, and studied opera, and then went to NYU and studied acting. And at some point, my acting became a job. Like it had to be a skill. Like I couldn't walk around the world with a child and then two children, um, uh, creating and operating from my wound. my womb for my characters had to be healthy.
Yeah.
It had to be positive. So so it's like been this weird sort of um journey for me as a human being, because my work actually, again, was centered in an emotional place, and it's still there, but in order to maintain a kind of a continuity, a consistency for my work, I've had to really create technique, which I've done over a decade of time.
Mm-hmm. Who was the first person that told you could sing, or how did you know that you were so
That's when your
gifted?
You
talent came
know,
out.
I made my mother smile when I sang. I sang Coal Miner's Daughter. I was born coal miner's daughter. My friend Carson knows that somewhere. No, she's from North Carolina. Um, but yeah, and that made her smile. So I would play the piano, and it made my father engaged in what I was doing. I have 4 siblings, so it was all about trying to get the attention of your parents. My parents
Yeah.
worked very hard. They were scientists and teachers, and you know, to maintain the focus, um, to maintain their focus and their attention on you, you had to perform, which ultimately would be problematic for me, but I figured that out later on. But um, uh, so if my singing made them light up, then I thought, oh, that's what I need to do for them. And then I sort of developed it, but it was always there,
Okay.
always able to sing. It wasn't until many years later when someone said, you know, not everyone can sing. That's a gift. And I thought, really? Um, so that's when I started to sort of think, oh, I could do this and this could make me some money. I grew up with the Whitney Houston of it all and the Janet Jackson of it all. And they were just amazing women who were doing amazing things. And that's when all the desire to be famous and be in front of a camera came involved. But yeah,
Do your
that's where the
siblings
singing.
sing?
What?
Or do your siblings sing? Are they in the? Yeah, your siblings. Are
Yeah.
they in the entertainment?
No,
No?
no.
Okay.
My brother is a coach. My sister is a doctor. My other sister's an executive. My other sister's an attorney. Everyone asks me, you know, do any of your siblings act? And I always say, not for a living, not for money, but they do act normally on a regular basis. They are, we're all actors to some extent. You
Right.
know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes.
And we do all perform to some extent in our lives.
Especially those attorneys.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They can create a narrative like nobody else. But also doctors. I always joke with my sister, he doesn't have a great bedside manner. I'm like, I could teach you how to do
Soften.
that better.
Talk
Right.
her on
Soften the
television.
voice.
Right. I could teach you how to have a better bedside manner.
So how did you land on opera? Did you have a passion for it?
No, my parents told me that I had to go to college.
Okay.
I didn't want to go to college. But if I did go to college, I was going to study singing, music.
Okay.
And I don't know how I came up with the Northwestern, but they had a great opera program, a great singing program. They came down to audition some people in Nashville, and I ended up auditioning, and I ended up getting a scholarship, which was crazy. And because I didn't have to pay for my education,
Yeah.
I went.
Sounds right.
I didn't love my undergrad education, not because it wasn't great, not because there weren't great teachers, but because I really was a square peg trying to fit into a round hole.
Yeah.
I did not know myself well enough at 17 years old when I went to college. I just
you
did
carried
not.
a lot. As if you were looking at, if you were being more of an empath at 9, 10, 11, you know,
Yeah.
that's a lot to carry.
It was, I think my high school career, I was really, I was student council president. I was hiding a lot. Like I didn't realize that. I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself to discern where in my childhood I developed the need to create emotional attachments and how those emotional attachments got developed in a negative or a positive way. It is obviously relationships affect your quality of life, but especially as women, we extend our emotional and our mental capital all over the place in our lives, in our families, in our jobs. And as an actor, I do it probably exponentially. Like the stress of, creating characters and their emotional lives um, does take a toll unless you have some place to objectively navigate all of that stuff. I mean, it does build up over time. So, um, my high school years were really great. They're really productive. It wasn't until I got to college and I was on my own that I started to feel like I'm different. There's something different about me, and I'm not sure I like it. So I went through a long period of not really liking myself, um, until I came to New York, and New York feels like home to me. It felt like when I came to New York, I was like, oh, I've made it back home. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd never been here before in my life, but suddenly I was like, oh, these are my people. Hi. It was weird. Like this is my energy. Like, oh, there goes my Empire State Building, and there goes my Grand Central Station. Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
New York has that way of you almost find comfort in the anonymity because you're part of things, but you don't have to actually touch them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very peaceful in New York. And I've always found that about the city.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges too of like having a little bit of notoriety is that you really don't have any privacy. Like you don't have any anonymity anymore, and not in the ways that many actors around me or many of my colleagues have. But there is that sort of that piercing of your anonymity bubble, I guess it would be. But when I came to New York, it was more so I started to understand my connection to spatial, this the impact that and the stimuli of spatial aesthetic architecture has on me as a human being. I started to really understand that what I'm looking at does really help create the world that I'm able to live in and the world of the characters that live around me. It's like why I live very close to the Botanic Garden, and I live right where the Brooklyn Museum is and the Prospect Park, and the library is right there. And all of that is really food for my soul, not just for my characters. It's a pure source of inspiration. Nature is. And whenever I get too overwhelmed, I'll go to the water, I'll go to the beach, I'll go, whatever. But yeah, coming to New York City, it felt very, very much. I don't know if you have had that experience before, where you go someplace and you're like, oh, this feels like all awesome energy for me.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that Kansas City for you?
Oh, no, it's here. It's
Oh, it's
definitely
here.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would live here in a minute if I could, when hopefully I can in a couple of years when my daughter's out of high school. But
Yeah.
I absolutely do that. And I think it is. I think it's the energy. I think it's the architecture. It's very, I don't feel crowded here, which
No.
is coming from LA and Kansas City, where
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's crowded here. It feels right.
I would say like when you come over the Brooklyn Bridge and you look at downtown Manhattan
Yeah.
and the architecture of like very old school New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is just something, or like even just being at like Lincoln Center, like at night with the there's just something that's majestic.
Yep.
That you just sit back and you're just like you can't describe it, but it's just so beautiful to you.
Well, and there's also this feeling of, I don't know, for me at least, from being out of choices. Like I was telling someone, I was at dinner with my son and we finished, it was like 10:30. I jump in a cab to go back to my hotel, and the world is still happening, and other places it's not.
No.
And you can be part of it or you can't. I could go home and go to bed at 10:30, and but there's just so many choices
Yeah,
here.
there's something to do.
Yeah,
here.
and I think
energy.
that's I think
the
it's
different
that energy.
energies.
Yeah, that is that. Do you play? I mean, the projects that you've had recently, so many of them take place here. Do you think that's part of what attracts you to them? Is New York is almost a caricature?
All of the shows that I do have some sort of socio-political agenda. In morning television news, there is a kind of human being that's attracted to giving information, telling the truth. It's about facts. I'm going to tell people that is a journey. That's an inspired journey. And I think in the case of the storytellers and the writers on And Just Like That, they're the women that they're showing, essentially, I feel to some extent are kind of clowns. Like we're kind of running around and we boop, 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 run into something and then we, move on to the next moment in life. New York City lends itself
Mhm.
to that experience. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't get on the subway train and someone is not clowning around, or making you laugh or making you giggle, or you see someone in the corner and they're dabbing their eyes because they're emotional. That's just, part of the climate, but it's also part of what attracts me as a human being to the work that I'm doing and to the people I work with. Like there really does have to be an inspired social conversation that we're having, either about personalities or characters behind these highly important, um, paradoxical pillars in our society, like news and journalism and or relationship and love and women in the 21st century. Even Yellowstone was that to some extent. Yellowstone was about the Dutton family and the soap opera, but it's also about sovereignty. It's
Mhm.
about land, it's about money, it's about loyalty. And I think at the end of the day, that's what attracts people to these stories, to see them over and over again. And so I think, hope that my collaborators come to me for those things, but that's what I look for in a part.
Did Yellowstone film in Montana? Was it on where did
I filmed
Yellowstone?
a season 3 in Utah. So they filmed
In
in Utah
Utah.
and
Okay.
Montana. And I think after the pandemic, they were filming almost entirely in Montana for
Okay.
pandemic purposes. It was
Yeah,
easier to,
to keep things separate.
yeah, safe.
And when you're on a set like that, or in Italy, of the beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful,
Unthinkably Good Things.
oh my
That was
gosh.
amazing. Amazing.
Is that a different, I mean, does that bring a different energy than
Oh, for
filming on the
sure. I was
streets?
going to
Yeah.
say, when we were talking about cities, I feel like Rome is one of those places where you
Yeah.
go and you're like, the eternal city, or Paris, a city of light. Like you absolutely, um, you feel the centuries long resonance of what those places mean in the world. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would spend uh, maybe an hour or two every night walking in Rome, like walking the
Yeah.
streets of
Mhm.
Rome to try to feel the energy of why a woman um, could go there and get caught up in just the culture and the romance of a city like that. Why wouldn't you just get on a plane and come right back home? Like, what is it about that place? And there is something really, oh gosh, singularly romantic. You can be a single woman in Rome and feel the romance of feel like your life is romantic and storybook. And do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
fairy tale, like, I feel that in Paris when I go to Paris.
Mhm.
Um, took my kids to Paris and my daughter and I went up to the Eiffel Tower. She's not at the top of the Eiffel
Yeah.
Tower. I'm afraid of heights. She's not. But I was going to go up there with her because my daughter is not going to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower on her
That's
own.
just what
Yeah.
mamas have
It's
to
like
do.
you
Mom's
just
got
have to
bite
go.
the bullet. So I bit the bullet and I went to the top, and it was just, I was so glad I did. I mean, I was in a fetal position on my way up the elevator, but it was magical. Place is magical. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That city feel, the tagline, I don't know if it was a tagline or something, from the Hallmark movie,
Unthinkably Good Things. Yeah.
from Unthinkably Good Things, was just falling in love with your life.
Fall in love with
Yes.
your fresh start.
Your fresh start.
Your
And exactly what you're talking about, Rome feels like that. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't
That's
have
how
to be about
yeah.
other people. It's fall in love with
falling in
your,
love
It's
with
about
yourself, which is what
yes.
attracted me to that story.
Yeah.
It was about this woman being there and her friends coming, and but it was about them recreating the story of what their life was,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
loved that idea.
Yeah. It doesn't have to
There's
have another person.
I remember there's a book that Edmund White wrote, The Flaneur. I completely botched the name because I have a terrible French accent, but it's all about wandering Paris, and it's about how you need to approach cities like New York or Paris, and it's about this gentleman who wanders just aimlessly,
Yeah.
and what he discovers on the way, and the people you run into or the shops, and you always find your way back, and that's how I always think of Paris.
Mm.
Like you don't take subways in Paris. You walk.
Walk.
You
Yeah.
walk everywhere.
I try to do that here.
Yeah.
People will say like, "Oh, do you do this? Do you do this?" And I'm like, I try to walk. I mean, my greatest fear when I come to New York is it's going to pour down rain every day I'm there, and I'm going to be like, "Oh, I'm walking
That's
in the
my
rain."
well,
Right,
LA.
right.
Every
Walk,
time I
walk,
go to
walk.
LA, I'm always like, oh, I have to take a cab
I
10 blocks.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got to LA that I thought that I forgot my umbrella. Like in New York, if you hear that there could be rain, you
Right.
have an umbrella in your bag.
Yeah.
You know
So
what
you
I
can
mean?
walk.
But I love that idea of I think of my life as very nomadic, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
always I can't ever do acting from home. Do you know what I mean? Like I have to go on location.
Yeah.
But there is something about that very intentionally getting lost,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think people are very, very afraid to do.
Yeah.
And I make myself get lost sometimes.
Well, it's important to find yourself too, because that's how you find yourself.
Yeah.
You see what it reminds you of who you are, or it can bring you back to yourself or ground you. It's like there's just something about making yourself get lost that's where you meet yourself in some ways.
Right.
You're
Also
not
think
living in fear.
There's that sense that what I've experienced is that, you want to get to that place where you're successful. Like I'm going to get that press ring and you realize when you get there, you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. This is actually not that cute. Do you know what I mean? And you're you become very keenly aware that you miss the purpose of success if you did not live during the journey. If you did not take a stop and look around and see where you were going up that mountain and look at what was going on. And, for me, going into either Prospect Park or whatever nature trail I'm on and intentionally getting lost reminds me that it isn't about getting found. It's actually about looking around you as you go through your journey. So I love that idea of that book.
Yeah.
Wandering.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Do you miss New York when you're in LA?
I do. And I miss LA when I'm in New York.
Okay.
It's like a weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird.
How often do you go back and forth?
All the time. Like 2-3 times a month.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes. Like
Okay.
it's a lot when I was shooting the morning show.
You just wrapped on that, right?
I just wrapped a couple of weeks ago. I think people are going to love that show. I wish I could talk about it now because it's
so good.
Interesting. It's an interesting. We have a new showrunner.
Oh, okay.
She's brought a lot of air. The show I think was very deep. A metaphor of water, light, sun. If I'm going into that metaphor, our new showrunners brought a lot of air into it. So it's a lot more buoyant. Do you know what I mean? And I think people are going to be interested in that. I think that's going to make them want to binge.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Are there new faces?
There are new faces. There's a great new actor, Clive Stand, and I work with Clive a lot on the show. Nikki Bahari, it's fantastic actress. John Hamm, obviously, is really great.
So great. So those
So
commercials
dreamy.
work. Where he was asking to be on Apple. He got it.
They
He got
did.
it.
I think he's in on another Apple movie, actually, I think. And who else is on? Oh, just Tig Notaro is on it. June Diane is also on it. I love her. She has a very small part on the show, but she's so fantastic on Grace and Frankie or Frankie and Grace or whichever's that show. Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda.
Grace and Frankie.
Who else? Lots of really interesting. It's a very famous designer who's on it this season.
We're meeting with Kristen Hahn soon.
Kristen's
gonna come.
Yes.
I'm very excited to meet her.
Yes.
So we're meeting her to do an episode in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, she's going to be on.
I met Kristen before we started season 3, and we sat down and had a conversation about my character and about the morning show season 3. And as a producer on the show, she said, whatever you need, and and oftentimes you're working with, if you need something, whatever. But with Kristen, I felt like she really, really meant it. Hey, if you need anything, let me know. And she's very salt to the earth, really lovely, beautiful person, and smart producer.
Really
I'm
looking forward
excited.
to meeting
Yeah.
her. We recently had we're speaking to an actor, and she said something really interesting. And she said some actors bring themselves to a role, a piece of themselves to a role, and some it's a complete vacation from themselves to go play this role. And I'm curious now, like different styles. Do you feel like there's a little Karen in all your roles, or are you like, I'm leaving Karen behind and I'm going to take a little vacation to go play?
It's the latter for me.
Yeah.
I leave Karen. I try to.
Uh-huh.
I think part of what makes a character unique is if I bring a little bit of myself in it, because there's obviously nobody like me in the
Yeah.
world. And that's part of my brushstroke, my artist brushstroke, if I bring myself into the experience. But I found in season 3 of the morning show that I brought more of myself than I ever have. Like I said yes to this outfit, or hey, no, I think we need to go in this direction, or this hair, or this storyline, or I think this is important. I have a lot, because I'm on these interesting platforms that have a lot of audience members now. I have a lot of people reach out to me and tell me how important the representation, me representing them in this character, is to them. And that for a while was really it was like very daunting. Like I was like overwhelmed by that. And just in the last 6-7 months have I decided I can't really carry that so much. I really do need to embody my characters with my imaginative impulse. It can't be about anything other than that. Otherwise, it's not. The characters don't live.
Mm-hmm.
What is your creative process into going into characters or building them?
It starts with it starts maybe with it starts with the page. It starts with the words on the page, and then it starts with the idea of who the writers and the producers think the character is, and then I'll read it, and then I'll either hear her voice very clearly, or I'll see her, or hear a song maybe, and I'll think, or it will strike a chord in me. For instance, with Mia Jordan, the idea of a woman who was highly ambitious um uh but who had a self-inflicted wound of being involved with the wrong man hit the right chord in me. So I was like, yep, I know her. And it was kind of this woman is kin for me. This is kindred. Same with Nia Wallace, where my first encounter with her was this moment where she'd had a white woman say you're not who I thought you were, and instead of Nia putting her hand on her hip and wagging her finger at her, she just got really curious about, well, what do you joined this class because I'm Black? Is that true? Do you know? I mean, it was really a moment of her pulling something out in Miranda to sort of help Miranda figure out what she actually meant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me is a very Karen thing to do. Like I'm probably going to be more curious about you if you put your foot in your mouth, and if you just, were smart about everything and just said everything perfectly or whatever. But yeah, no, I think we'll start with the words and with the page. Then I walk the character around and see how she behaves, like what comes up in my body when I work on the character. And then I'll go back and I'll see who's working on it, who the collaborators are. Like in the case of the Hallmark movie, I knew nobody on it, but I went back and I saw that the company had gone through a change. They had a CEO of the company who had made some remarks about, I don't know, I'm not going to say it correctly, but it was something that I wasn't aligned with personally or politically. And I understood that they brought someone in to replace him. And I thought, oh, this company is in transition. They want to do something. They want to do something here. And then I remember thinking about my mother and mahogany cards and how she would get mahogany cards from Hallmark. Then I went back and looked and saw who the director was, an actress named Terry Vaughn, who was trying to do something a little different, directing. And she had been directing for a year or two by that time. And so then I went up talked to the SVP of production, um, Tony Judkins, and she had mentioned some things to me about the work that I did, and went back to and read the story again. And I thought, yeah, I need to work with these people. That's my arc for getting a character started.
Do you see yourself going behind the camera?
I do. There's actually a couple of projects that I'm working on right now that I'm actually writing. And I have a lot of friends who are great, great writers, like Pulitzer Prize winning, like Tony Award winning. And so I've been very much like, I'm not going to write. I know what that takes. And I am not Lynn Nottage, and I am not Ayad Akhtar, and I am not Bruce Norris. Like, these are all incredible writers, and Carrie Aaron and Taylor Sheridan. I'm like, I'm not stepping over on that side of the camera. But it's gotten to the point now where I feel like it is so it's the next level of evolution for me as an artist.
Yeah.
And when I was much younger, I would write my own little stories in my room and my own little plays and do the thing. And I've got so much more information now about what works and what doesn't work in the arc of a story and the arc of a relationship of a character to the world. So there's lots of people that I'm talking to about doing projects with. And obviously I'm committed to the morning show and Just Like That. But there's just so much I can do with a character in the middle of an ensemble show.
Yeah.
You really do need to make yourself available to support the other actors and to support the storyline and the vision of the storytellers.
Yeah.
But that after a while can be confining. You can do it, a few months out of the year, it's fine. It's actually a joy. But then as an actor, you're ready to branch out and do more. So it isn't really even, do I want to? Am I interested? It's really like I have to at this point.
Yeah.
It's time.
I have to. Like I can't even, the more I sit around and think, oh, I'm just gonna wait, the more guilty I feel. The more I'm like, you gotta do it's like when you need to work out and you're not working out, like your day is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really enjoy your day until you go ahead and just work.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and
do it.
Yeah.
Is there a collaboration with yourself as the actor and the team to keep those fresh, to keep those characters evolving and fresh?
There was in the morning show
ensemble?
this past time. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say a lot.
Yeah, she
I'm
changed a
going
lot.
to have a hard time watching Mia Jordan season 3 in the morning show because I put so much of myself in the conversation personally. But on it Just Like That, that character really was created through the vision of Michael Patrick King. So a lot of what he wants for the character, I'm interested in exploring. Like I'm super curious about what's going to happen to her and her marriage and what his vision of it is. Because I really enjoyed Sex and the City too. And I thought it was so cleverly done. I mean, it's so thoughtful and fun and funny. And as a collaborator, Michael Patrick King is just the funniest person, quippy, but also tender-hearted and cares a lot about that show, cares a lot about the characters on that show. Not because he wants to do it right, but he wants to feel like he's doing the best work he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's inspiring.
With
I wasn't sure if you had a question.
I did have another question. You mentioned and Just Like That being a comedy and the morning show, which just seems, anybody that does morning show, like in real life, I think they have to, it's exhausting to me.
Yeah.
There's that whole, and then you have a political thriller coming out, the film.
What we do next.
Yeah. Do you have, and even what Renee asked about getting behind the camera, do you have a favorite genre? Is what you want to do for yourself, does that lean in one way or the other? Or do you like exploring all of these different genres?
I think what's really great about television and American television, American cinema is the the coalescence, the amalgam of streaming television and how it's literally blurred the lines between cinema and television. I
Mhm.
look at the morning show and it looks like the movies that I love to watch, do you
Mhm.
know? And just like that is rom-commy for me, which is also another one of my favorite genres of film. So I really do think that the streaming services have blurred the line upon which you can dream,
Mm.
you can be
Mhm.
inspired.
Yeah.
So I'm I think I'm more interested in just how much further once I start to create my own product, how much further I can open up, I can push that.
Okay.
Um, push the genres even further. And I think that's part of what happens when you have women involved, when you have people of color involved, people who you haven't heard from very often, when you have um, the um, when an African American woman can show you what she looks upon in her gaze, what's interesting to her, thereby you see a different story, you know, based upon who the storyteller is. And I'm interested in showing people the stories um, that I'm inspired by in my life, which have changed my life and the way I look at my life. Um, oh, I want to talk about them, but I can't because it's too early in the process.
You're gonna come back.
I'm
Well,
gonna
yeah.
come
Yeah.
back after we've
Yeah.
gotten those started, but yeah.
When you look back on your career, how important was mentorship to you, and how responsible do you feel to be a mentor on these sets?
Well, I've had a couple of really great mentors, people, and also people working in theater backstage who will
Yeah.
just give you good info, um, sit down with you. And or when my daughter was very young, I did a play with Frances McDormand,
Oh.
and I know,
Oh.
she is just the most inspiring actor to me in American film. I mean, the movies she's creating, the door she's opening for women, for female directors. She's doing everything that I think I want to do. Um, but my personal experience with her is we did a play um, that David Lindsay Abaire wrote. I was an understudy for Renee Goldsberry, and my daughter at the time was 2 years old, and she would come to me at the theater, and Frances would just take her into her dressing room, and they would hang out, and they would play, they would have a good time. And then my daughter would come back out, and she'd be like half an hour to curtain, and Frances would have to get ready. But I just remember her just, you know, giving the best version of what it meant to be a woman, a mother, an actor, just kind with her advice, and um, just a great example of just really hardworking actor. And I also did a play with Laurie Metcalf,
Mhm.
and at Lincoln Center, um, called Domesticated. It's written by Bruce Norris, and watching her was also really such a lesson for me. I mean, seeing women do the thing that you think you can do and showing you exactly how it's done is the great joy of working with actors, especially in theater. Um, but I don't think anyone could have told me how to do the thing that I'm doing right now. I don't think I have any friends around me that would say, you can do this big show on Apple Network and you can do a big show on HBO. Like, no one, in fact, the people that I loved the most in the world, maybe 10 years ago, said, you need to leave this. You need to get a real job. You're a single mom. You got 2 kids. You really need to focus on raising your children and settling down into like a more better life. You're doing too much. This acting thing is just not going to work. I'm sorry, it's not. And had I listened to them, and I mean, now I can say they were wrong, but in the moment,
Right.
I was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
gosh darn it. I
How did
need
you
to.
push through that?
How? Um, I finished grad school and I didn't have anything else. Thought, what am I gonna? I don't have anything else. What am I gonna do? I've already spent this money at NYU. What do you mean I'm not gonna go? I'm not gonna act. I'm gonna try. I gotta try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think I just have a lot more patience than a lot of people, and I
Yeah.
understand that the artist's life, there's a long incubation period sometimes
Yeah.
for it. I do have friends who popped out and they did all the work. They were very successful in their 20s and then spent a good amount of time not successful
Mm.
and then came back and did
Mhm.
things again.
Mhm.
But I had this long incubation period, which actually helped to focus my work, helped me to figure out, no, I don't
Yeah.
want to do everything because I couldn't. I had 2 children, so I couldn't do regional theater.
Yeah.
Had to stay in New York. I had to wait to move to LA because my daughter was in grade school and I couldn't leave her,
Mhm.
There were just things about my life that informed A, why I needed to continue to be an actor, and B, why those people were wrong. I also had a mother who gave up in a real way. A real job, you're a single mom, you've got 2 kids, you really need to focus on raising your children and settling down into like a more, better life. You're doing too much. This acting thing is just not going to work. I'm sorry, it's not. And had I listened to them, and I mean, now I can say they were wrong, but in the moment,
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
gosh darn it. I
How did
need
you
to,
push through that?
I did, how, um, I finished grad school and I didn't have anything else. Thought, what am I gonna? I don't have anything else. What am I gonna do? I've already spent this money at NYU. What do you mean I'm not gonna go? I'm not gonna act. I'm gonna try. I gotta try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think I just have a lot more patience than a lot of people, and I
Yeah.
understand that the artist's life, there's a long incubation period sometimes
Yeah.
for it. I do have friends who popped out and they did all the work. They were very successful in their 20s and then spent a good amount of time not successful
Mm.
and then came back and did
Mhm.
things again.
Mhm.
But I had this long incubation period, which actually helped to focus my work, helped me to figure out, no, I don't
Yeah.
want to do everything because I couldn't. I had 2 children, so I couldn't do regional theater.
Yeah.
Had to stay in New York. I had to wait to move to LA because my daughter was in grade school and I couldn't leave her.
Mhm.
There were just things about my life that informed A, why I needed to continue to be an actor, and B, why those people were wrong. I also had a mother who gave up in a real way. She gave up her ambition to stay at home. That, as I could weep over that because that's affected every decision I've made as a mother since my children were born. My mother was brilliant brilliant scientist, and in the mid 70s with 5 children, I mean, we don't she didn't have the choices that we have
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just didn't. Unhappy in an unhappy marriage, not living the life that she wanted to live entirely, but making the best of what she had. And I can go out and travel coast to coast, and she'd be very impressed with it, with my life. But a lot of the desire to wait and figure it out was because I saw her sadness at the end of her life when she said, I could have done more. I could have done something. I could have taken a bigger chance. So now, having said that, I'm not sure that I should have done everything I did. When I look at my kids, I think, well, should you have stayed at home? But the difference is that now I see the other side of the coin. I see the other side of the choices that she couldn't make. So yeah, I think that's part of where I got it from.
Yeah. As you were coming up, actually, my question. I'm trying to formulate my question. I'm not there yet. So I'm gonna
do you consider yourself brave? You sound so brave to me. Do you think of yourself as brave?
Yes. I would say, Christian, there's a part of me that my friends are definitely like, man, you're fearless.
Yeah.
I'm a risk taker. I am the one in my if there's some there's like this vaginal I'm just gonna go there. There's like this yoni steam thing here at this place called the V Spot. And my friends are like, I'd heard about it on Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith, and she was talking about getting her yoni steam. I was like, okay, Jada. But then I decided, let me try this. And then it came up on my algorithm, as it will.
Even if you just think it in your brain,
Instagram.
I was gonna say, we know what's gonna happen when we all open our phones later.
No. When you open up your phone, it's gonna be
Karen said it.
in Union Square. Try our $100 off your first visit. So anyway, I'm like, let me try this V-Spot thing. Just trying this yoni steam. So I'm the one going, and friends are like, oh yeah, you tell us how it's gonna go. I did the the cryo, you freeze your fat.
Yeah.
Do you know that thing?
Yeah.
I was one of my friends. Like, I was the one who had to try that, Karen. I was like, okay. Yeah, I'm the risk taker in me. I take more calculated risks nowadays. Like, I'm just a lot more thoughtful about it, but I am a risk taker. I've been that way. I'm always the one who's tip of the spear. I'm the one who's jumping off the mountain first. I'm the one who's bungee jumping. I've never jumped out of a plane. I'm not going to, but I'm definitely the one, and my friends are like, yeah, Karen, because I think a lot of people think there's something special.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you have to be special. You have to be a special kind of a person to do the thing. No, you don't, actually. Everybody can do this. Everybody can do it.
The question I was formulating had to do with self-doubt and whether you have experienced that heavily or not. And it kind of plays into this part of the conversation of like, do you ever, it's like, I feel like you go at things and once you make the decision, you're in it. Once you calculate that risk of what that looks like. Do you ever have doubt in terms of some of the roles or some of the choices or risks you've taken?
I mean, in the world of my job, I think I'm like a lot of women. I feel self-realized. I'm ambitious. I absolutely know acting. You can come at me with a lot of shit, but you cannot come at me like I'm not a good actor. I mean, deuces, get out of here. Like, there's no way. I feel very sure that I spend a lot of time in my life developing the work that I do. Still more to learn, but in personal relationships and relationships with men, and that's another story. Like, then I take very few risks. Like, I'm fearless. I am incredibly afraid of getting my heart broken, of all those things. And I think some of that is just because I do feel so vulnerable. Like, I've worked so hard on myself now. If someone came into my life, I know I would really, truly know how to love them, and my heart would be broken if something did go wrong.
Yeah.
So that's probably the areas where I have the most self-doubt and the most anxiety about being successful.
I know Jen is giving us, we're almost out of time, but how do you you're so busy and you have so many great projects. How do you take care of you? What is your step away of
That's a good question.
How do you ground yourself?
work and pamper? Yeah,
that's a good one. I was just talking to my shrink about this yesterday. Yes, about grounding yourself. There's so much to get distracted by.
Yeah.
This red camera and the Gucci and I saw it. Don't I know you from? It's like there's a lot, and it can pull at the fabric of. It jerks your ego forward, right? Hey, yeah, you do know me from. You feel that, and the Instagram followers and your trailer and all that kind of stuff. Um, the way I stay grounded is to remind myself to be aware all the time, practice gratitude. I'm so grateful to be even here today with you guys and talking about all the things, and just to remind yourself that this isn't about performing or being seen. It really is about reaching people, being in service, um, reflecting back something, entertaining
Mm-hmm.
people, making people laugh, making people think.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. It's not about, although I love to dress up and I love to be on red carpets and I love a nice swag bag. And I'm like, Karen, would you like a pencil with your? Yes, I would like a pencil with my script. Thank you. I love all of that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if there's none of that around, and there was no money to be made doing this, I would do it for free. I would be one of those people in a small town and wherever. And, this year we're going to do, wait for it, Oklahoma, everybody. That would be me. I would definitely be doing it. And so it is just about remaining really grounded in that. That's constantly telling yourself. I talk to myself really well as self-care. I didn't always talk to myself in positive ways. I was very mean to myself for a long time, and that was reflected in the relationships that I had around me. But self-care for me now is just really talking well to myself and not keeping anybody around me that is full of BS.
Authenticity is important, and it's being authentic to yourself as well as externally.
Right. And I think that's different for every person, but I also think that, you can't just pay lip service to it. I mean, I've ended a lot of business and personal relationships on the instinct and the intuition that this doesn't work anymore. And then maybe a month or 2 years, I recognized if that was the best decision. Detaching from things in a loving way that don't work, I think, is really important. Saying yes to areas of your life where you do feel fearful. Like, I'm going to do a half marathon.
That's a feat.
My trainer is like,
The Brooklyn Half Marathon, is that
maybe that's in March?
Yeah, my son just signed up for it. The only reason I know about it.
I've done the one in Central Park.
Yeah, the more one, right?
The more one, that's 2 loops of Central Park. It gets very boring on the second loop.
I'm walking on the first, after the first mile. My trainer's like, I don't know. I'm like, let's try. He's like, okay. But yeah, I guess that's the best answer to the question for me. It's being aware, constantly telling yourself, humbling yourself.
But I love the speaking nicely to yourself. I think that's something that we all struggle with. Like, be kind to your inner voice. Needs to be kind.
All the time. I have a trainer. I work with him, and after every rep, he says, "Great job, Karen. Beautiful, Karen. Great job, Karen. Keep going, Karen. Good. Looks great." After every rep. And if you hear that after every rep, you're doing 15, 20 reps of like 8 different exercises. By the end of the workout, you are floating. You're floating out of the room into the next thing you have to do. Can you imagine?
No,
after
wonderful.
Every rep. But he's so great at it, and I don't. It just makes me feel so good, and I think, wow, that's how I need to be. Great job, Karen. Great pot of coffee, Karen. Great.
Yeah.
Great shower, Karen. Good job. You brushed your teeth, Karen. Good.
The world would change if everybody could do that.
If my kids could do that,
right?
My son was saying, "I hear you, Mom. You're in my head," and I cringe because I'm like, "What did I say? Did I say something good? I hope I did. I hope it's positive."
But the kids hear it all. The kids hear everything.
They do,
and they can mimic it. They can see it. It's like, even to this day, I have my mother's voice in my head, and everything I do, I can hear her. And
they can hear how you talk to them, but they hear how you talk to yourself too.
Yes,
that's very much.
Yes,
that's what I forgot.
Yeah, It's being mindful internally and externally about what you're putting out there in the world. And I think it's something that people are saying a lot, but whether they're practicing it or not, putting it into practice is so important.
Yeah, I think it's especially true. My kids saw me. I mean, my son, I was pregnant with my son when I entered grad school, right? And he's now 18. So he's seen me go through job, no job, pregnancy. We moved to East New York when I had no money. I was working on Broadway, then off Broadway, then a little bit of work in this Marvel TV show, and then I ended up working more in LA and eventually getting the morning show. So he's actually seen how I have navigated mentally and emotionally all of those things.
Mhm.
My daughter hasn't seen much of it. She's just the last couple of years, but she's like, well, I'm riding in first class, right? Do you know what I mean? Whereas my son is like, oh, we get to ride in first class? When did this happen? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Different perspectives.
Yeah,
It's
different
very different
perspectives.
perspectives. when
different.
your
And so
kids
there's a
see it.
very different, he's seen me talk to myself in a lot of different ways
Yeah.
over time, and seen me pull the all-nighters for auditions and that kind of a thing. So how important it is for me to be able to reflect upon how I'm talking to myself really is a reflection of the success the better I talk to myself, the better I do. And I think he sees that. And hopefully he's heard that. Who knows?
They have.
Fingers crossed.
They
Yeah.
have.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. We would talk to you
Having
for
you.
hours.
It's
I
all
know.
over.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.